Welcome to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. Established in 2016, the Fintech Times is a global multimedia news outlet centered around the world's first leading fintech newspaper. We report on the latest and brightest ideas from the fintech world. Follow the conversation using hashtag TFD News and Views and follow us at the Fintech Times.
Hello and welcome back to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast, brought to you by Vanta. Vanta helps you save time, money, and build customer trust, all by centralizing program requirements and evidence collections for frameworks like Dora. If you want to manage risk and improve security, then head to vanta.com/fintech times to learn more. Thanks for everyone's coming back and listening in this week. I am once again joined by Francis. Francis, how have you been and what's been going on this week?
It has been a relatively quiet week, I would have said, until today, when we had, on the day of recording, that is, we've seen the big payment out or banking outages. And at first I just got a notification on my phone about it. And then when I went to try and check my bank, lo and behold, couldn't get on it. So this isn't the first time we've seen it, but I think that's definitely sort of changed what we're going to be talking about over the weekend at the Fintech Times. But no, other than that, it's been a good week once more. How about yourself?
No, definitely. I agree. It's a bit scary how many outages we're having in the UK, especially at the moment. I know Barclays had one maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. And now we've had a number of banks, their apps are going down as well. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly they can get those back up. But as we hinted at the end of last week's episode, we are also joined today by a very, very special guest. So I'm pleased to introduce Emmanuel Daniel, founder of The Asian Banker, as well as author, advisor, and futurist. Emmanuel, thank you very much for joining us today. We're super excited to have you on the podcast. But for our listeners that don't know you as well as we do, can you just give us a little bit of an introduction into who you are and what it is you do?
Well, I should start by saying I'm a very good friend of Mark Walker. How's that? Does that sort of give me a good lead in? You know, we've been really good pals for the longest time. I am the founder of The Asian Banker out in Asia, which is now rebranded as Tab Global because we are also in Middle East, Africa, a lot of developing economies in the area of banking. And then, extended it into fintech and wealth management, private banking, that sort of thing. I'm in the business of providing consulting, research to banks around the world now, in all kinds of areas, transaction banking, retail, all the good stuff. And then I am also the author of an amazing book that I completed 2 years. I published it 2 years ago. The Great Transition, the Personalization of Finance is here. And I'm very happy that everything that's happening in banking today is just coming through just like a script to the book. And, we can talk a little bit about that. And then outside of that, I travel around and I was in Qatar at the same time as Mark was. We attended a conference, was nothing to do with banking, but helped us to understand where AI is going. So there's a lot to unpack on that front too.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, we have a lot of guests on the podcast, a lot of interesting sort of job titles, and I think futurists might be the most interesting we can have on, really. And it's good to see that as you said, the trends that we're seeing at the moment are following like as a script of your book, which goes to show that you are not lying when you say futurist, and yeah, seems to be pretty good at predicting what's coming.
Actually, I don't know where that came from, but then I took it in good stride. My staff laugh at me saying that as a futurist, you're not responsible for anything you say about how the future is going to turn out, right? So you're going to always be talking about something happening tomorrow. But one of the nice things about being a futurist that comes from the banking industry is you need to sort of project into the future based on how you actually understand the mechanics of how banking actually works. So everything from the future of banking, AI and all that, well into areas like geopolitics, will the US dollar continue to dominate, what's BRICS means. I go back into how the banking infrastructure actually works in the global economy, and then sort of project into how it's going to probably turn out. So it's been a really amazing ride because it's bringing together the disciplines in technology, on the balance sheet of the business of banking, economies of entire countries, and then sort of casting it out on the news of the day, and what all the different politicians are doing around the world. So it's been fun, and I have a purpose to being a futurist. I'm in the business of helping businesses make decisions for today. Take a bet on what the future will be like, what to invest in, how to prepare, how to navigate and strategize, how to time your strategies, stuff like that. So there's a real world purpose in what I do.
Fantastic. Well, as we said, we're really happy for you to join us today. And I know you've also picked us an article about AI and fintech to delve into. But before we get stuck into that, I think Francis is going to give us the rundown on another article, which is about a new embedded finance offering. So Francis, why don't you take it away?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Tom. So yeah, as you sort of just alluded to there, the article that I'm bringing to the table today is all about the Roadside Assistance Organization, the AA, and how it is launching an instant savings account by leveraging the cloud-native banking-as-a-service embedded finance platform, NatWest Boxed. So following the partnership with NatWest Boxed, millions of AA customers can top up and withdraw money instantly from new FSCS protected savings accounts while enjoying competitive rates on personal loans. This partnership will enable AA to expand its range of financial services with transparent financial products, giving its customers more control, choice, and confidence over their finances. So whether they are saving for their first driving lesson or helping with the cost of an emergency repair, this is where that partnership will really be impactful. So these savings and unsecured personal loans are set to become the first step of a long-term strategic partnership, setting the foundations for the AA to grow and offer a wider suite of embedded finance solutions over time. So the reason we wanted to bring the article to the table today is I want to sort of get your guys' views on the impact of this partnership and the knock-on effect it will have on the sort of roadside assistance industry, I suppose. I know for a fact that emergency car repairs can be extremely costly, and I know that when you have a backup like this and know that you've almost, I don't want to say necessarily a safety blanket, but it kind of is in a way, and just knowing that you can get funds quickly is extremely helpful. So with this, do you think this is something that is going to take off across the industry, or is it something that, is just going to be, not necessarily every organization is going to have it? Or on the flip side, is it going to be, it's no longer a nice to have, but a necessity to keep up with competitors? Tom, I'll come to you first.
On this podcast, we've spoken about embedded finance so many times, but it is cool to actually see moves like this from big recognizable non-financial brands like the AA actually taking the opportunity to offer financial services. I do wonder how popular these kind of offerings are going to be, whether people are going to take to it quickly. When I think about it, I initially think about how it's a cool idea and I can see why certain sort of demographics and people would find this useful, but then I'm not necessarily sure I would 100% use it myself. Is there enough value in it to make me move away from like the traditional financial offerings? And I'm not too sure at the moment. So it's kind of a 50-50 in my mind. I can see the value in it, but equally I'm not sure there's enough in it at the moment or what's coming to make it a really mainstream product and maybe make it a bit more of a niche. So yeah, I think it's an interesting thing, and I'd like to see more of this coming through, not just in roadside assistance, but in other industries as well, because I do think embedded finance offerings can be hugely impactful, and it will be really interesting to see how things like this really do kind of continue and grow over time.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's an interesting point there that you bring up in the sense of that, what is going to make mainstream adoption take place? Like, what is the value of the product? And I suppose from the way that I see it is that if there's a label for a certain loan that you need either for driving lessons or the emergency car repair, like is stated in the article, I think in that situation, you might not always want to do research into different offerings and see what's out there. You just want something that's very readily available. And if you're already doing something through the AA, whether it's, that's how you're doing your driving lessons or whatever it might be, to have the loans available there and then and ready, and having that instant money available to you with these sort of competitive personal loans, I think that is where the value really comes from. It is that it's just almost at the tip of your fingers right there, and you can access it whenever you want. Emmanuel, what do you think? Do you think sort of similar views, or do you have a different opinion?
Well, guys, I come from the other side of the equation. I come from the high street banks like NatWest, uh, having to worry about how to increase the number of customers they have and how to compete with other high street banks to for the incremental increase in customers. So what they do is that a salesman goes out, looks at all the retail type organizations that are out there, and the most beautiful retail type organization out there is the AA, because it's got just about every driver in the UK, and there is an AA in every country, and they've got millions of beholden customers just sitting there waiting to be commercialized. And the reason the AA has been successful for generations is precisely because they are very specific and and very fair in their business model. And so there's a strong trust element that already exists in the AA. And all of these are exactly what a bank like NatWest is looking for. So the NatWest salesman goes out to AA and say, you know what, we've got this thing called, you call it embedded finance. The other name actually is banking as a service, right? So we've got this banking as a service. It's a platform. We just onboard you, and you look like a bank as a result, or you look like you're providing financial services. But the actual deal is between AA and NatWest is that NatWest runs the entire program for AA, borrows its name, and then hands back to AA, a portion of the profit. So what the deal is between the two, that will be interesting to know. And AA doesn't take any of the customers onto its own balance sheet. It's actually a NatWest business. And the fact of the business is that NatWest has been looking for a partner like this since I think 2022, because that's when they came up with this banking as a service platform. The actual vendor providing this platform for NatWest is Vodeno. It's a fintech. It's just basically a simplified form of enabling a non-bank to look like a bank, but at the back end, everything is run by NatWest. Then the question to ask is, how much does this contribute to NatWest's incremental increase in number of customers? In other words, how many of the AA users or members are going to latch onto this? And so some of the points that Tom mentioned is to, would I or would I not want to take on yet another bank account from a non-bank because I have a stronger relationship with them? So that comes into question. The numbers that NatWest has sort of alluded to is that this incremental increase in customer base contributed about 4 to 7% of its revenue in the last few years. So it's not very much. It's just incremental. Then the next question to ask is, how much of a regulatory burden it puts on to the AA as a result of being seen as a financial service provider. So now AA has to invest in people who understand banking, who sit in the organization, which it never had before, and then having to deal with the regulators, file their reports regularly, make sure that they don't break any rules and get into trouble, that sort of thing. Although in theory, it's the bank that takes care of that for AA. And like that, you go around, you look at retailers, Tesco, they all have financial services, which at the back end is actually a bank that is providing that. And then, we need to see how sustainable it is in the long term, because it may well be 3 to 5 years from now, AA might turn around and say, you know what, it's not providing as much money as we thought it would, and yet the amount of work we had to put in to be regulatorily compliant is a little bit too much. I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see how that works. But the point is, all the high street banks are looking for incremental ways to increase their customer base.
No, absolutely. And I really like a lot of those points that you raised, and sort of especially taking it from the banking side of things. I think that's something that we don't always discuss on the podcast. So having your expertise there is really interesting. And I think our audience will really, appreciate that viewpoint. I think especially I want to see if you agree here, Emmanuel, is that when you see sort of a new fintech offering, a lot of the times it is within or the financial sphere itself. And I think that when we see sort of a real life application for customers that aren't necessarily that interested, or not necessarily interested, but perhaps just aren't that knowledgeable on the financial sphere, seeing an offering like this with the AA, something that they are used to perhaps, and then thinking, right, well, there's this banking as a service option. I could go for this, but maybe I won't for now. But then they sort of look around, and the more banking as a service sort of pops up to them, they might think, well, I remember seeing this one, NatWest, with the AA. Maybe I should go back to that. And I think it's not, even if, like you say, it's only I believe it was 4 to 7%, right? Even though it might only seem like a small percentage right now, I think again, I'd like to sort of get your views if you agree or not. But do you think there's a potential that just having the name out there associated with the brand might lead, like in the future, the more banking as a service takes off, is that association going to sort of be a bedrock that people come back to?
Like Apple Pay, for example, that's a banking as a service kind of or rather payments as a service platform. In the US, the embedded finance, efforts have generally failed because 3 years from now, the primary or the principal institution that provides the service, NatWest in this case, will discover that the cost of acquiring customers is prohibitive. So the amount of money that they have to spend to persuade AA customers to have an AA banking account, far exceeds the revenue feed that they get from that. You need to be an active transactor on the AA account to justify, the profits that can be generated. So generally, these relationships fail. That's what my professional opinion is. And at the time it fails, NatWest will put out to say that it cost us £5 to acquire a customer who only gave us £3 in income a year, something like that. So that's how the numbers work out. We tend to underestimate the marketing cost that's involved in converting as many of the AM customers or users into a banking customer. And then who picks up the marketing cost? It's usually the bank. That's almost a playbook in terms of embedded finance so far.
That's really interesting. Tom, do you have any sort of views on that?
I think Emmanuel summed it up very, very nicely, as good as we could do, to be fair. And I kind of maintain my point of I'm still unsure if this is going to be something that really takes off. And as Emmanuel said, it often, in many cases, that's not the case, and they actually do fail. They not end up being profitable. And it'll be really interesting to see, especially like you were saying earlier, the AA is arguably one of the most trusted and recognizable brands. It's so huge, and even me, like, I associate the AA, I immediately think that's a company I can trust. They've got such an amazing reputation, and maybe it's that kind of reputation that will make this kind of banking as a service offering become profitable, because it's a brand that's so powerful, and that anything that the AA offers, people are going to almost instinctively assume this is something I can trust, and this is something that's going to be beneficial to me, because every other experience they've had with the AA is most likely going to have been positive. So I think this is a really good kind of move for NatWest, and like you said, it'll be really interesting to see in 2 or 3 years' time what has happened with it and how successful it's been.
Right. Actually, the way that AA should be thinking about all this is that having built such a successful and trusted brand over generations, how to bring that brand into the platform era, where AA becomes a platform on which it can provide a host of different banking solutions, products, and so on. And so it's in AA's interest not it's in AA's interest to be agnostic, to provide multiple bank offerings, so that an AA customer will say, oh, I can go back to the AA side. I can choose which bank account I want to use. I might already have a bank account, in one of the banks that that are listed on AA. So then AA becomes a platform. And the one financial product that the AA is in a very good position to sell is car insurance, motor insurance. And there the idea is not to be beholden to any one motor insurance company because AA is a trusted brand, but to say, okay, these are the brands that we will recommend, and for that the brands pay AA a fee. So AA's real challenge is how do we take the trusted brand into the platform era, and provide financial services of one of the many things that we enable our customers to do, so that our customers stay on our platform.
Exactly that, and I think you've made some amazing points there. And like you said, as something we always say on this podcast is, it would just be a case of let's wait and see what happens and see how this space develops in the future. And in many cases, that's all we can do. And we're going to keep our attention on the future because your article, Manuel, is all about the future of AI in fintech. And I can't think of anyone better to give us a bit of insight into especially the future of AI in the financial sector. So can you give us a little bit of insight into the article and on why it is you've picked it?
Actually, that article continues from our conversation on embedded finance. So if you project embedded finance into the future, what should platforms be doing? What should financial institutions be doing? And the AI element in the future forces banks to start thinking about how they can be embedded in the lifestyle of their customers by enabling their customers to decide how and when they would want to integrate back into the bank. The way banking works right now, the bank decides the platform. It used to be the bank branch, and then it went into apps that we have on our phones. But with AI, the customer is able to build his own interface with the bank. He's able to use agentic AI to give instructions to his AI to decide which bank to access, how to access, make payments, make transfers of money between accounts, all that stuff. So the bank's ownership of the customer through their apps is now disintegrating because the customer has greater power as to who he wants to relate to and so on. So a lot of the work now has to focus on enabling customers to build their own API interfaces easily with the institution. Only then will the bank be relevant going into the future. So it's not just looking out for platforms like AA, but also enabling the customer to decide his own platform or the platform that he wants to create, and he can do that very easily now through agentic AI and decide which bank he wants to interface with. So the whole relationship, as well as the whole marketing and distribution strategies of banking, is being put on its head at the moment, and those changes are coming to us fast and furious, and that's why that article in Fintech Times perked my interest.
Yeah, I can see that, and I really like the article because each of the respondents, when you read into it, really delve into a different aspect of not only AI but how these different sort of versions or sort of ideas of AI can impact different areas in finance and fintech. And one of the ones you mentioned that I think I've always got my eye on and I'm always really interested in when people talk about is sort of AI agents and how they're going to make certain processes, a lot more efficient for banks and fintechs. From what experts say at different events, they could have a transformative impact on that entire financial ecosystem and beyond. And that's without even really getting into the likes of chatbots, generative AI, personalization, as you said, like customer experience. And I think there's so many kind of different ways that AI is going to impact fintech as a whole that it's almost impossible to think, oh, this way is going to be the most transformative. But I think one thing that I was interested in is just finding out for both of you what you're kind of most excited about. What aspect of it are you most excited about coming to the future? Francis, I'll come to you first. Is there kind of an aspect of AI that you think, yeah, this is going to be the game changer or one that you're most excited about?
I almost think it's impossible to tell at this point. I think although AI has like sort of taken the world by storm, I still feel like we're very much in its infancy, and that there's still so many ways that we probably can't even imagine right now, and sort of ways that are yet to be developed in which AI is just going to completely revolutionize the financial sector. And do you know what? Not even just the financial sector, just probably all sectors at this rate. It's not limited at all. And I think it's interesting because in the article there were a few points that really stood out to me, and it was this idea of, you know, using AI can sort of free up a lot of time in an organization, and in doing so, the high roles and the people in these positions that previously had to spend time sort of doing, you know, like data entry and stuff like that, things that they no longer need to do. And there's this idea of just spending more time sort of making these strategic plans. And I think that idea is really good, because I think the more people talk and discuss and sort of think, well, how can we use AI to help? That's where sort of these ideas that I'm talking about that we can't even begin to imagine yet, that's where they sort of grow. Also, I thought another thing that I found really interesting in the article was the idea of chatbots. I know you sort of touched on them, Tom, just ever so slightly, but in my opinion, I hardly ever find a chatbot that useful. I think the amount of times that I'll go onto a website and then a chatbot is there, and I just scroll through and I'm looking for an option to call someone for customer service for whatever reason, and I just normally find myself, if there is only the chatbot there, it's put in the problem. They inevitably don't give me a solution to what the issue is, and I end up saying, I'd like to speak to an agent. And I think, again, this idea of we just don't know how the extent of AI. And I think that in sort of 10, 20 years, I really and truthfully don't think there is going to be a need to call people, because I think chatbots will be that far ahead that they can sort of deal with any sort of solution or problem that you bring up to them. The only issue then, I think, is then a security question. And I think that's when you get into the idea of regulations and, you know, how are you ensuring that whatever the AI learns is the data is being kept safe, and so on and so forth. So I think there's, you know, a lot of different verticals that are at play here. But yeah, I think that it's just impossible to tell right now what the future is really going to hold.
Yeah, chatbots are the bank's way of thinking that it still has control in the relationship with its customers. Chatbots is the bank's interpretation of AI, and that is, oh, our chatbots will get better and we'll talk like a human being, and our customers can ask us anything. But actually, AI is the other way around. It's the customer having so much power that an 8-year-old girl can build her own API and decide which bank she wants to work with. And she will build her own chatbot, which will ask all the questions that needed to be asked to complete the transaction. So banks have to think of a world where an 8-year-old is more powerful than their chatbot. So that's the change in dimensions that need to happen. And that transformation that you're talking about, one more element in there is the fact that we are so much in the early days of AI, in that, I still remember, I think it was 2008 or something like that, when the world reached 1 billion internet users, right? So we are still in the early days of AI, where maybe about, I don't know what it is, maybe 600-700 million people worldwide have access to AI, right? And even that, it's on a laptop, it's on a mobile device. It's not device independent AI yet. So the number of devices on AI and the number of users having access will in itself, transform life as we know it, the way in which we talk to each other, relate to each other, and so on. Just the other day, a friend of mine was saying that she had a problem with some local government issue, and she just gave the facts, and AI wrote the letter for her, and she sent it off to a local MP. Just that. So it's like in 2 minutes, you've got a complaint letter to the local MP, written by somebody who doesn't normally write a complaint letter. So we're going to see a lot of this, empowerment of the individual to relate with everyone around them. That's where the transformation will take place. That's also where it happens.
No, absolutely. And it'll be really interesting to see just how well, obviously the sort of use of AI is becoming so widespread already. Like you said, anyone can get onto ChatGPT and get it to cook up a complaint letter or a letter like a cover letter if they're applying for a new job. We're seeing people make CVs with them in kind of all aspects of life. People are utilizing it already, and this is still quite an early iteration. And we're going to see we've already seen since it launched publicly a huge sort of level of involvement from that. And I think it's just going to continue almost exponentially. So it'll be really interesting to see how far that can go.
Yeah, so the mental map in an institution is that it's not in our control anymore to dictate how the relationship will evolve. And so we need to turn the table around and say, okay, the force is coming from the other side of the table.
Absolutely. I honestly think we could sit here and talk about the AI potential in financial services and beyond for hours and hours, and you'd never even touch the side. So, but I think we've wrapped it up very nicely. I think we've given a good kind of aspect of what we expect to happen and just how transformative that is going to be. And I think it's a good time for us to move on to, I think, what is our personal favorite aspect of the show whenever we have a guest, and that's our quick fire questions. So I'd like to just fire a few questions at you, some fintech related, some not, that just to get to know you a little bit better, have a little bit of fun along the way. And so I think Francis, you're going to kick us off.
Okay. Yeah, don't worry, man. We won't throw you in the deep end just yet. Yeah, you're all right for now. So the first question that we have is, obviously we've just been speaking about AI, but outside of AI, what is going to be the most impactful technology in fintech this year?
Outside of AI, impactful technology in fintech this year will be tokenization. So the way it's going, the regulators and the central banks tried to dictate tokenization. So they came up with something called central bank digital currencies. They've now thrown that out of the window, and they've asked the banks to tokenize their deposits. The American banks are telling us, throw that out of the window too. Let's just go straight into stable coins. And that's what Bank of America is doing. And I think that's where we're heading.
That is really interesting, especially given like how long we've spoken about CBDCs for, and now just a complete change in path.
Yeah.
Following on from that, very serious question: if you are a sports person, what is your favorite sport and why?
I am a sports person of sorts. My favorite sport is badminton, and I like that over tennis because I see tennis as being raw energy and raw power. Badminton is a far more intelligent game. It requires a lot of strategy as well as stamina. You can either be a long player hitting far and hard, or you can play the net and try to deceive your opponent. So it's an intelligent man's racket game.
You could have given me countless guesses, and I don't think I would have guessed badminton. So fair enough.
I think that explains why I've always been a little bit better at tennis than badminton, because badminton's the intelligence man game. So maybe that's why I need to brush up my badminton, clearly.
Present company excluded. Sorry, but I mean that's my snobbish way of looking down on the fact that I don't play tennis very well. So
no, I can respect that, and to be honest, I think you might be spot on there anyway. But moving on to our next question, moving back into the fintech sphere now, what is your most used everyday fintech app?
Most used fintech app is cross-border payments, as it turned out. I've got bank accounts in multiple countries, in Singapore, in Beijing, in China, in Dubai, in Malaysia. And in Malaysia, I'm renovating my house, so I need to make payments and I transfer money from Singapore. In China, my difficulty is the income that we make in China. You got to spend it on a credit card. If not, you can't take money out of China. That sort of thing. And then Dubai, that's a tax-free haven, so I make sure that my royalties are sent there. That kind of thing. I'm actually revealing too much about my financial lifestyle. And so I'm very sensitive to speed and cost of cross-border payment transactions. And it annoys me no end to have a bank flag a transaction that I've been doing for the last 20 years just because they put in a new software for KYC. And they said, they asked me, who is this transaction for? Can you give us more details of the person? They said, it's from me to me, and I've been doing this for the last 20 years. And just because you put in a new software doesn't, give you the right to annoy me. So that's that's my daily life, more or less on finance.
Well, you're definitely not alone with the pain and the friction associated with cross-border payments, and that's something we're also always talking about. Just how long is it going to be till we actually get frictionless cross-border payments? Whether they will ever happen, I'm not too sure.
And I must add that I just lost $50,000 on Ethereum, or rather, it's gone missing just because I didn't know that when you do a transfer, you got to use the same platform on both sides of the transaction. So now I'm shouting at my platform provider to say, hey, come on, guys, can you look for the money and all that. So it's not that, so I have my own set of problems, both on fiat as well as on crypto. And I hope I get my money back.
Oh, so do we. That's a horrible experience, and well,
it is.
you have to keep us updated about your success with that, because that's obviously a very big problem. It obviously goes to show that there's no silver bullet. It's not just blockchain is the way forward, fiat currency is the way forward. I think there's friction associated with everything, and there's a long way to go before we're doing easy cross-border payments.
The thing about crypto is that you can't underestimate the amount of technical knowledge a person needs to have to get crypto right. I mean, you basically have to be an IT nerd, to like crypto. Unless you're making stable coin payments, regular ones that you understand, that kind of thing. So it's a learning curve even for me. Yeah.
Absolutely. And to bring the tone back to a little bit of fun, and to one of our sort of favorite topics for these questions are always food related. So our question for you is, what is your go-to takeaway order?
That's a good one. I like to think I'm a meat eater, but my comfort food is still carbohydrates. I'm a big potato guy. I love breads. I'm like over invested in bread. Like I'll be losing weight by going easy on the carbs and doing meat and all that, and then I'll start the day with coffee and lots of croissants and sweet bread. My big thing, my big comfort food is sourdough. Sorry, I was going to say sourdough bread. And that's because the wife of a friend of mine does the best sourdough in the world. And so every time I visit with them, I eat the sourdough, and then I pack it off in my bag, and I apportion it over several days. So I'm a big sourdough fan. That's my comfort food. Yeah, for many reasons. Yeah.
I mean, if we put aside everything we've said in the podcast today, that the two things I've heard there, you're a big potato guy, big sourdough fan. And that is enough to make you a friend of the News and Views podcast. I think we can all agree 100%. With you there, and there.
Oh, well done.
We're very, very happy to hear that.
Yeah, good company.
100%. Obviously, at the start of the podcast, you mentioned that you met our editorial director, Mark Walker, at Qatar recently. And on that sort of topic, what fintech event are you most looking forward to this year, having obviously already just been to one?
Well, I organize, I don't organize fintech, I organize banking events. Actually, I've stopped going to attending fintech events. I think I understand the genre quite well, and I know where it's going. So I spend more time attending events outside banking, because that's where we get a glimpse of what finance will look like. I've already decided that fintech is being merged back into banking. And that when you attend a fintech event, it's either they're looking for investors or they're looking for banks as customers or clients. It's a baked-in formula already, so there's nothing more that I need to understand in fintech. So there are no fintech events that I look forward to these days, but I would attend conferences outside fintech deep tech, or the web, stuff like that, AI in general, to get a sense of what the thinking is out there. If at all there's a fintech event that I do want to spend more time, it has to do with cryptocurrencies, digital assets, because that whole universe is run by people who are very different from banking type people. They are trader types. They are willing to take high risks and high rewards. They like to test and learn different things, and they're also very technology savvy, stuff like that. So lots of things that bankers aren't. People in the token world, in the digital assets world, in the crypto world, they're very, very different people. So I like hanging out with them because there's so much that I don't understand, and the only way I'm going to understand is by absorbing, by listening to them, the way they talk about where everything is going.
100%, and I mean that makes complete sense because after all, if kind of like you said at these fintech events, I know there's definitely been a few. I don't want to say all of them because I don't want to badmouth any of them because they all have their own their merits and points, but I think there are definitely a few points that get repeated a lot that I know for a fact that we've heard, just like I said, the same thing repeated. So it makes complete sense that the ones you're looking forward to are, places where you'll get unique viewpoints, unique ideas, and then integrating that into banking. That's I think the value of it, right?
Fantastic. And I know I spent Monday at a digital assets summit in London, and there were so many new ideas and things that I hadn't heard before being thrown around and discussed, and so many things I was like, God, I need to look into this. These aren't things that I were aware of. And like you said, as soon as you take a turn into sort of new areas of finance or new technologies, you start hearing phrases that you haven't heard before or you're not 100% aware of, and you realize there's so much more to learn outside of just simple fintech events. So I can completely agree. But I think now is a good time to move on to our final segment of the podcast, which is what I learned this week. So each week we have so much new news and insights across our desks, and we like to pick out a little something to share with our listeners. So Francis, what have you learned this week?
So this week I learned that Pag Brazil has launched its new one-click Pix offering to reduce cart abandonment and improve cash flow.
Fantastic. And something that piqued my interest this week was a new study from Intelliflo, which is a financial advisor technology provider. And it revealed that financial advice remains dominated by older generations, with those aged over 40 making up a staggering 88% of advised clients. So clearly there's a long way to go before we close the advice gap. Now, Emmanuel, has there been anything in the news this week or any stats that have piqued your interest that you want to share with our listeners?
Because I spent a lot of time in China, I came across a piece of material this week that, and it's research from within China. And I was very impressed with the quality of research on small businesses in China, which is that the biggest concern of small businesses in China is repayment from local governments. And that was, to me, the biggest indicator that the lack of resources of the local governments in China, local state governments, provincial state governments in China, is still very in a very difficult phase. So it's research like that gives me an indication of what the real situation is. So you read the newspapers and you see the grandstanding of governments on big topics. It's how that affects small businesses that tells you the real story. So learning that this week gave me a better perspective and makes me a little bit more of an authority on what actually happens in China, where I spend a lot of my time.
Fantastic. So I think that brings us to the end of the podcast today. Emmanuel, thank you so very much for joining us this week. It's been great to have you and your insights.
Great to be on the show with all of you guys, Tom and Francis.
Fantastic. And with that, we'll see you guys next week.
See you then.
Thanks for listening to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. Don't miss next week's episode and continue the conversation using #TFT News and Views and follow us at the Fintech Times.